What's going on, all you beautiful aviators? RandomEd787 here. Today, we're going to be doing a full-on review of the brand new A2A Simulations Piper Comanche 250. And we're going to be just flying around a little bit, have a little fun. But don't worry, it's not going to just be me flying around. I'll show you a couple of the features of this brand new aircraft. So, let's go ahead and jump right into it. Ever since Flight Simulator launched 3 years ago, one of the first things that came to my mind is A2A Simulations gonna come back with an aircraft for this? And well, I could say after 3 long years, they finally have come back and they brought back their good old Piper Comanche. Now, I've flown a few A2A Simulations products in the past, mainly back on FSX. I've flown the Cessna 172, the 182, and the Piper Cherokee, so I have a pretty good idea of what to expect from these guys in terms of quality. Now, a little disclaimer, I've never actually flown the Piper Comanche that they previously had in FSX, and I've never flown it in real life, so I can't really say how much of an improvement this is over the original Piper Comanche or if it flies like the real thing. So I'm mostly going to be reviewing this based on my experience, as well as making a few comparisons in terms of features and immersion with some of their previous aircraft. So far, I've accumulated about 8 hours of this plane, just, flying around, doing touch and go stalls, and a couple stress tests. And by stress tests, I mean kind of crashing into the ground almost, not like a full-on crash, but I wanted to see if I could actually kind of beat the crap out of this airplane, see what happens to it. Okay, on to the review. So let's start off with one of the features that really impressed me the most. Now, this feature has been in previous products of theirs, but they really went out of their way to really improve this, and that's the walk-around feature. Now, the previous versions of these, I have to admit, were a bit static and bland. They didn't really mean all that much a lot of the time. I mean, granted, it was still necessary to do, but I kind of dreaded doing it in the past. But now, I actually look forward to doing walk-arounds in this plane. And I think the reason why I enjoy it so much more is because it has more of a personal touch this time around. For example, you can just click and move the ailerons, rudder, stabilator, and flaps, like I said, literally just with the click of a button, whereas in previous versions, there was like a separate window you had to do all that, or if you wanted to check your controls, you had to move your yoke around. I don't know, they gave it a more personal touch. And I would say another reason why I just find it so satisfying to just do these walkarounds now is also due to the sound effects. I mean, seriously, I know they're subtle and kind of small, but just really take a listen to some of these sound effects. I really believe it's just these little details that just go a long way to really making things more enjoyable in these kind of aircraft. Also, one more thing, this is something that I think is completely new. I mean, you could technically do it in previous versions, but from my experience, it never changed. This time, you can actually check for water in the fuel tanks by getting a fuel sample. This is something that you actually have to do in real life, because if you have water in your fuel tanks, that's not going to be a very pleasant flight to have. So I'm extremely happy that A2A even bothered to put this in. Now, I haven't had it happen to me yet, but I'm actually looking forward to when it does, just to see something different and dynamic happen while I'm trying to fly this thing or, do my walk around. Alrighty, next, let's move on to the airframe and cockpit, and once again, A2A spared no expense both inside and outside the aircraft. Everything in this plane is beautifully modeled, from the cockpit to the buttons and switches, the seats, even something as small as the control locks for your airplane. Nothing in this was left out. One of the things I love about A2A planes, and Some other airplanes that I tried is when you start or shut off the airplane or while it's running, you'll see the cockpit engages, shake and everything like that. I just love that little detail. Plus, what I also love is that even when you're in the air, if you look at stuff like the visors or other stuff in the cockpit, you'll actually see stuff shake, and that could be an indicator that, hey, maybe you should have your engine running a little bit better. Also, on a little side note, night flying is just as fun, and the lighting in the cockpit looks incredible. And you have plenty of options. You have a floodlight, a red light, and even a little adjustable light right in back of you just to get the right amount of light, just so that way you can see just a little bit outside as well. One of the things that's become a standard with a lot of add-on aircraft these days are EFBs, or electronic flight bags, you know, the little tablets that a lot of these aircraft come with. And A2A added their own with the Piper Comanche. Basically what A2A did is they took a lot of the previous features they had from, you know, the in-depth stuff you can do with your airplane, and they put it all into one convenient EFB. You can find out a ton of information like the weather outside, your checklist. Heck, it even comes with emergency checklists. That I thought was pretty cool. You can even customize the radios to have GPSs or just use the stock radios that the airplane comes with. You can even set the rate at which failures and wear and tear can happen. That's right, you need to actually inspect and check these airplanes because they wear down over time like their previous products. Now, one new feature they have, at least to my knowledge, I'm not sure if this was in other airplanes, but regardless, this is still pretty darn cool. You can actually inspect the actual status of your engine both on the ground and in the air. And when you lean the mixture, it'll tell you how hot or how efficient the engine is running. Now, I don't really use this that much because it kind of feels like cheating to me, but it's a great way to help teach you how the airplane is running. So once you kind of get used to where you gotta lean the mixture in flight to get the most efficient engine performance, then you can just stop using it. But it is a really cool little training tool to have. When it comes to aerodynamics, A2A is always a step ahead of the game thanks to their AccuSim software. And once again, they bring their A game here. One of my favorite features, and I think this is also new, I can never tell because again, I didn't try out the other Comanche, but there's this turbulence strength meter and it could be easily missed. So what it actually does is simulate realistic turbulence in the cockpit. You're actually bouncing around and everything. It almost feels a little scary sometimes, but it's so satisfying just to hear all the wind swirling around. Seriously, it's just so damn immersive. It'll blow your mind. Seriously, take a listen to some of these sound effects. And even when you're in that turbulence, the aircraft is still insanely fun to hand fly. I can't explain the satisfaction. It has to be felt to be believed. Now, one area that's probably gonna surprise a lot of you is landing this plane is not really as easy as you might think. And that's mainly due to the large wingspan. Apparently, A2A says that the large wingspan causes the plane to float a lot when you try to flare. But when you do eventually pull it off, it feels so good. So I'm still practicing. My landings are still a little bit rough on this thing, but I am beyond determined to get it right. And one of the cool things is that you can actually adjust the sensitivity on, you know, the elevator, the trim, and even the rudder trim. You can adjust these to like how sensitive they are. So that's a cool little feature to have and can possibly make things a little bit easier. And speaking of landings, you should also try landing on grass strips. It's just as fun, if not more fun. I would say mainly due to the amazing sound effects. Once again, just listen to this. I mean, seriously, A2A is just a step above everybody else in the sound department. Take a look. Alright, lastly, let's talk about some bugs and glitches. Now, thankfully, this was a pretty polished product on release. I only really encountered 2 bugs, honestly, like maybe serious bugs. Nothing like game breaking or anything like that. I never had a crash with the plane or anything like that. The first bug I encountered, I believe, was actually on my first flight. The trim wheel just all of a sudden started to have a mind of its own. I couldn't get it back to neutral. I don't know what was wrong. Eventually did get back to where I wanted it, but it hasn't happened since, and I'm pretty sure it's been patched because A2A recently came out with a huge update for the aircraft. And the second bug I experienced, and this was thankfully the last one, is that the instruments would just freeze. They just wouldn't move. They would stop functioning for a few seconds, then they would come back on. But I don't think I've experienced anything since the patch, so I think this one's been fixed as well. And one more thing I wanted to mention, I don't think this was technically a bug. I just say it was just some janky animations. Sometimes with certain parts of the aircraft, like when you're doing walk-arounds or you see animations in the cockpit, some have just really low frame rates, but thankfully, actually, this part's pretty cool. A2A actually saw my previous video, my first impressions, and said, thank you for the feedback, we'll fix that in our next update. Now, there are still some animations that are a little janky, but the majority of them, they fixed with an update. So all I can say is, A2A, thank you so much for taking my feedback into account. That really means a lot. So they're working very quickly to get any issues resolved, and they're doing a very good job with it. Okay, well, that pretty much covers everything in this video for the review. So how about we get down to my actual verdict of the plane? What do I really think overall? Well, let me just say this. If you've never flown an A2A aircraft before and you're out there just hankering for a realistic general aviation airplane, all you gotta do, it's really simple, is get your credit card, head over to A2A's website, and buy the Piper Comanche right now. It's only 50 bucks. I mean, yeah, I can understand that might be a little expensive, but honestly, for this, I am totally satisfied with my purchase. So if you're new to A2A, you are going to love this thing. But I will say this, if you're a much more casual simmer, you just kind of like to get in and go, I don't think this is going to be for you. This is really for the hardcore simmers, people who like to really take care of their airplane and like it to fly as realistically as possible. So I'd say if you're more casual, this probably isn't going to be for you. And finally, if you're an A2A fan like I am, and what I think of this plane as an A2A fan, like I said just previously, this was worth the 50 bucks I spent. However, I'm not quite on the same hype train as everybody else who are calling this like a game changer. I'm not knocking on them. I'm not saying this plane is overrated or anything like that. I just don't really see myself like that excited. Don't get me wrong. This is a plane I'm going to be flying for the foreseeable future. There's no doubt about that. I'm going to be in this plane almost all the time. I'm just not on that same hype train as everybody else, if you know what I'm saying. So, but look, if someone tells you that they think this is a game changer, I respect that opinion. I have no problem with that. I just don't quite see it in that regard. But still, like I said, this is a very solid aircraft, totally worth the 50 bucks, especially if you're looking for that general aviation realistic itch that you've been wanting for so long. You can't do better than A2A. I'd say they nailed it again. Their quality is just unlike anybody in the industry, and I just can't wait for them to bring more aircraft into the sim. That's probably the only thing I'm a little depressed about, is that it's going to probably take a while for some more aircraft to come in, but I look forward to seeing what their next product is. I'm sure it's going to be amazing, just like this airplane. Anyways, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this review. I'd like to know, what do you think of the Piper Comanche if you purchased it, in the comments below? I'd like to know what you think, and what plane would you like to see from A2A next? Me personally, I think bringing the J3 Cub in would be pretty nice, in my personal opinion, because we already have the Cessna 172 in the game. I don't think we need another Cessna personally, but that's just my take. Anyways, guys, leave a comment below, and be sure to give the video a like and subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Happy flying!